Hi, my name is Spencer, and I'll be talking to you a little bit about law enforcement and how it's possibly becoming corrupt. Have you ever thought about why police are corrupt or law enforcement? Many people believe that they are, and some people believe that they aren't. I guess it all just depends on some people's encounters with law enforcement. Obviously, if you've had a good encounter with law enforcement, you're going to believe that most or all cops are good like that. On the downside, if you've ever had a bad experience with any law enforcement officer or any police officer, you're probably going to think that that officer is bad and all of law enforcement is bad. Sometimes you have to actually think about what makes law enforcement or some police officers corrupt. It's actually sad to say, but the number of law enforcement officers that are becoming dirty cops, as I like to say, or people who accept bribes or tips from people that are committing criminal acts, are on the rise since the early 1990s. Since the 1990s, these cops have committed crimes by taking bribes from other people and letting that crime to continue to happen just because they accepted that bribe. Mostly, you'd wonder why they'd do it. Like, why would they take a bribe? They're law enforcement officers. They're supposed to be protecting the laws, not abusing the laws they are sworn to protect. But most of these officers do not make a very high salary every year. So, whenever they see a few $1,000s or a few $100,000 that are being offered to them by these people that are committing the criminal acts, they see it as an easy way out or something to possibly solve their financial problems, so they go ahead and do it, which obviously is a bad thing to do. Some officers even lie under oath, even in court, to try and protect their backs. They lie under oath to prevent themselves from going to prison or to have other officers or even the judge find out something bad has happened and they might lose their job. The number of officers compared to the number of people has drastically decreased since the early 1900s, mid 1900s, even late 1900s. The amount of people per officer is just overwhelming. For example, like in Pittsburgh, there's about a little over 330,000 people, and there's not that many police officers. And if you do the math, and I did the math, there's about every 30 police officers for every 18,000 people. And that's about, if you do the math, or 10,000 people. If you do the math even further, it shows that there's only about one police officer for about every few hundred people. And having one police officer try and protect a few hundred people at one time is not a good scenario. It's hard for the officer to actually watch all 300 people. These types of things will get the officer or that person in law enforcement to try and elicit money or try and take money or take a bribe from a certain person. The people are a major factor. The people in neighborhoods help actually influence the officer. If you have an officer in a very good neighborhood, chances are that officer is probably going to follow all the laws and not take that many bribes, rather than a person who is in a bad neighborhood or trying to patrol a bad neighborhood is more influential whenever it comes to the people trying to offer that officer a bribe and that officer actually taking it. Social media is one of the biggest things that has evolved since the early 2000s, the earliest 20th century. Anything that we do nowadays is being recorded or video recorded by someone at somewhere. So if an officer is committing a crime, it's bad enough. But if an officer is committing a crime and it's being recorded by somebody, that recording gets sent out to the public so all the people can see. And that officer not only looks bad for himself, but it puts out an image against police officers and law enforcement that every cop is becoming corrupt. So in closing, I would just like to say that even though there are good officers and good people in law enforcement, the rise in dirty cops and bad law officers or law enforcement police officers is on the rise, and it's up to the people to decide how they want to handle this. Because in my opinion, I believe that the world is just changing, and not every officer is going to be good. Thank you.